I think we should just dive right into this. Today I'm doing a first impressions flip through read of Celestial Bodies, the technical handbook, which I'm so excited to go through. Um, I haven't looked through the book yet. I've seen one element of the game, which is like an early peek at how combat works. Because Binary, one of the creators of this game, there's two people who created it. We'll go through that in a second. Shared a post that he had made about the grid, this kind of concept of how combat works. It looked really fucking cool. So I wanted to learn more. And Binary had also asked me to like read and give a quote before the launch, and I totally dropped the ball because life happened. So hopefully now I'm making up for it. I'm doing a stream. Very excited. Before we dive in to the game itself, for those of you who aren't aware, Celestial Bodies was just released on itch very recently. It's itch funding and like crushing it. They've raised over $7,000, the duo who are on this book, which is fantastic. I mean, super, super cool. As you're already getting kind of a glimpse here, it's a cool looking book. And so there's different editions sort of planned out here. I know you probably can't see any of this with how I've zoomed in and everything, but that's fine. But they're itch funding, which is cool. And the way that they itch fund, which I think I've seen Binary do before with like Valiant Horizon, is you pay for like a higher tier version of the book, and you get to make stuff or contribute stuff. So like you can get custom made weapons or a new faction of your design and stuff like that. I'm tempted to throw dollars at this and make Binary make a crow based faction just to get my crow boys into every possible game. So, you know, after I flip through this, I might end up doing that. So, we've got ourselves Celestial Bodies, the technical handbook. The book looks awesome. It's super, super cool. So Binary and Charlotte are the two creators of this individual, or of this game. I believe, from what I was told, I think Charlotte started the concepts of the game. I think maybe the grid combat and stuff like that, and then wasn't sure necessarily where to go or something with it, and then partnered up with Binary to kind of make the whole thing. I think that's the story. I think. I'm super excited though. Charlotte's an awesome artist, and Binary is a fantastic game designer. So, by their powers combined, it's gonna be a good game. It's gonna be a real good game. One thing to note before we dive into the actual flip through, I'm not going to be reading like the entire thing here on stream, all the words and everything, just because that wouldn't be particularly exciting for you. It would take us a long time. So this is all first impressions. This is me hitting kind of the key points of what jump out at the book, or like kind of the important things of the book, and talking about them. So for example, like when we get to the frames, which are like the different types of classes essentially, we're not going to read the rules for every single frame. We'll read a couple of them to get an idea. Same thing with enemies and stuff like that. I primarily want to know like, how do the core rules work? What do some classes look like? How does combat work? And some of this exploration stuff. And really the only things I know about this game going into it is that it's some kind of mecha game. It uses this really cool system for combat called the grid, which is really, really cool. I'm really into it. And Binary had reached out and said that a lot of the exploration stuff was heavily influenced by like Lumen 2.0 concepts of exploration. So we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, I'm excited about this. Look at this. Oh, the grid. The grid. It's very good. I want this in print. Obviously, I want this in print to like see like the spreads look together. All right, let's read like the introduction just so that we have a sense of what the concept of the game is. I know it's mecha, but I don't really know much more beyond that. For a generation after the calamity, the infinite dark between stars felt cramped, crowded by refugees on ships meant for fewer people and shorter trips. They drifted out, directionless, past the fractured settlements on the moon and Mars. Alright, so it's in our solar system. Those settlements were too close to what was and too risky given what happened. Ominous. In the second generation, those who survived in their home ships now cannibalized the metal skeletons of their less fortunate ships. Nice! The great luxury gardens that centered themselves on these cruisers now burst with food, air, and their own weather patterns. Fuck yeah, I love... This is falling apart immediately. Military mecha were dusted off, and they scavenged and fought on any moon and scattered space debris large enough to hold them. Anything for celestial superiority, to build their homes, their machines bigger, stronger, better. Third generation. Ooh, I love this timeline. Did not just expand their ships, they expanded their mecha and their operations. They fled to farther stars, populations and space systems or space stations on surfaces booming as quickly as lives were lost in petty disputes. The further they fled from the devastation of their homes, the faster they built settlements and claimed territory. Mechs were destroyed, from their ashes were reborn. Pilot and mech merged as one, and became more than warriors. They were celebrities. I love that idea. Explorers, pioneers. They became lamplighters, which I've seen that word before, so that's like an important word. I think that's like who we are. I think we're the lamplighters. Maybe. Or maybe the lamplighters are the baddies. I don't remember. Fourth generation discovered the Titans. No probe had yet reached these dead gods, oh shit, whose frozen bodies spanned hundreds of miles across. Once the strength of their bones were discovered, few people did not see opportunity that was presented. Strange dreams plagued those on the home ships near to the Titans, but it did nothing to push them away. Rare pieces of Titan bone were integrated into the mechs, but it was a difficult material to work with. Some pilots reported odd behavior from their mechs. Most did not find a difference between bone and steel, but it was still used. We are the fifth generation. This is very cool. I mean, it already has like cool, weird fantasy shit mixed into my sci-fi, which is like how I like it. Like I like science fantasy. So weird bones getting mixed in with the mechs is perfect. All right, here we go. This is the thing that I remember also seeing that's interesting to me. 1 to 6. So you can play this as a solo game. I'll be curious to see like what you need in order to do it as a solo game. I just personally find myself sometimes struggling with some solo games depending on like how much I have to do on my own versus like how much the game provides. So I'm curious to see what goes on here. You need a pair of 6-sided dice. All right, 1 per player. Anytime you use dice, that's what they're talking about. Character sheets, shared area for mech grids. This is for the actual, not for like the grid of where your characters are, but the grid for your character, your mech, which will make sense in a little bit. Combat maps, but if I know anything, Binary is going to have a cool thing on zones and paths that will explain it that I will eventually steal from him in one of my games. And then we got safety tools. Excellent. It assumes you're playing without some kind of centralized... Oh, cool. So this assumes you will be playing without that. Okay. I mean, that kind of makes sense with the one-player thing, but just in general, if you're going to play with a group, it assumes then that you don't have like a set GM versus player thing. We're all playing it together. But I do like this idea of like maybe having somebody be a guide who is more familiar with games and stuff like that. We got our safety tools. Love to see them. Okay, lamplighters. So we are the lamplighters. Anyone can be a pilot, and anyone can pilot a mech, but the two combined are imbued with a stronger resonance when sent on a mission by one of the great home ships. Ooh, I wonder if we get to like learn about these ships or design them. They follow the paths of many before them, and their journeys are filled. Or, well, that's what the propaganda says. Nice. Love that. All right. So we're a lamplighter. Here's what a lamplighter is. It's got attributes. I like attributes. So we got, and so these are related to the pilot. So that's an interesting, it makes me wonder then if we're going to see a good amount of play between pilot and mech. Like Nova is my mech game, and it doesn't care about the pilots at all. It's all about the mech. But I know lots of people who want both. So your pilot either has nerve, flash, precision, or force, some amount of those things. They can be spent as resources during exploration. Ah, there's the Lumen 2.0 thing. Got it. But it could also be used during combat to make your combat better, which is cool. All right, what's your name? 10 points to your attributes, no higher than 1, no lower than 1, or no higher than 5, no lower than 1. So you have to spend 4 on them to start, so really you have 6 points to increase them however you want. Pick your mech. We'll look at some of the frames here in just a second. And then what's your mech's name? Right, so you get your pilot name and then you get your mech name. All right, so we're going to see these mechs. In fact, what I think we might end up doing is going past this to get to the point where we learn about the rules in this grid, because I know roughly how this grid works because I read a side post that Binary did. But I kind of want to read that with you all so you have the context to understand why the grids are made up the way that they are and everything, because it's really cool. Light frames. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Close range killers or distant electronic warfare gremlins. Alright, so there's super small grid, as you'll notice here. Smallest frame, 6x2. And notice 6x2, that's 12. That means you have 12 HP. So each point on your grid is a point of hit points on you. Then you get some cool bonuses. It does have like all of your stuff, like your starting things. Ah, look at this art. It's so cool. You got your shotgun, your blade, reactor, processor, thrusters. As someone who played like a lot of Armored Core when it came out and then like gave up on it because I'm a baby and not good at hard games, I did really appreciate like the build crafting in Armored Core and stuff like that. So I think there's gonna be some cool stuff here. All right, here's what I want to do. I'm gonna come back to these frames. So we're gonna come back. You're gonna just see that it all looks very cool. There's a bunch of different. Look at that fucking axe, enormous axe, big fucking gun. Yeah, that rocks. Ultra frames, damn. Okay, we're gonna come back to all of that because I want to explain how combat works. And with that context, we'll go back to the characters themselves. This is not me. This is not a slight against the book in any way, shape, or form. This is the battle that literally every RPG designer goes through, which is what do you put first in the book? Do you put all the rules first and then character creation that has the context to it? Or do you put the characters first and the classes first and then explain it with the rules afterwards? There's advantages to each, right? So if you do all the rules first and then characters afterwards, you have the context to understand why the character creation works the way that it does. But the stuff that the players actually care about that are the interesting thing are the classes. They want to know what they can be. They want to see that stuff immediately. If it's super deep in your book, it's like you go, I don't want to read all of this until I get to the thing that I actually want, which is choosing which cool robot frame I want. So sometimes you want to go like, look, here's the cool robot frame. Now go look and understand how that frame works. It's a dilemma. There's no right answer. Okay, let's talk about ourselves some combat. Game set in a very fractious universe. Plenty of people. We're going to be messing with a lot of people. Joel says, yeah, keep going back. It's hard. I go back and forth on it all the time. Cool. So we are going to have to fight our way through some stuff. Eventually, yes, we can try tricking, sneaking, and persuading people, but eventually, you know, you gotta fight. Here it is, the zones and ranges and all that sort of stuff. This is good tech for people who like to do abstract combat, theater of the mind combat without... I've seen people try to do like the concentric circles and things like that, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work under the assumptions of relative distance, but zones and ranges and like zones and paths and things like that does work. And I saw Binary explain it really well in Valiant Horizon, which I believe is his total/effect fantasy game. I like zones a lot. Like I said, I'm probably gonna steal Binary's wording on one of these days because it's usually pretty good. We simply love zones. Welcome, Binary. It's good to see you. All right, so we describe a combat area in terms of zones. A zone is vague areas, landmarks, right? Important places. So if you're fighting in a warehouse, the zones could be like that balcony over there, that ground floor area over there, that pile of boxes over there, right? The like abstracted out ideas of like the major ways that you would slice up a place, not caring about specific distances, right? It's all relative, but instead just understanding what is connected to what and how far away are they from one another through those connections, right? So zones that are you can use this to figure out like things like range. So range is like a close range is anything that is in your current zone or one zone away, right? So zone range to another zone, usually defined for targeting or something like that, defined by how many zones away you are. So if you ever have a weapon that says close, you can attack anybody that's in your zone. Even if that zone is a bigger space in the combat space than that zone over there, it doesn't matter. This is this zone. This is the area in which you can hit people at close or one zone away. So then you look and see which zones are connected to this. It's something that you can very quickly sketch up on a sheet of paper. You just draw some blobs. You draw some circles. You draw lines that connect the circles, and now you just count the number of lines away one zone is from another, and you know the range between them. And this is how you track relative distance for an entire party, as opposed to the concentric circle things, which doesn't work. This is really good stuff. I like it. Anyway, that's how combat is done here. Irregular versus regular zones might make sense to be a bit abstract with the zones. Yeah, right. Especially since we're going to be dealing with possibly like giant titans and giant mechs and different things like that. So we play around with the space a little bit. Flow of combat. Round of combat typically passes back and forth between the spark and whoever opposes them until every character has gone. I'm going to guess the spark is the enemy, which feels really hard for me to read. My brain is going to struggle with that constantly. Only because sparks are the good guys in my game. But I'm pretty sure the spark is the baddies. But I'll fire it out. The spark is the group of the group of the lamplighters. Gotcha. Oh, the spark is the good guys still. All right. That makes sense. They're lamplighters. They're sparking. That makes sense. Cool. Between the party. Spark is just a much better word for party. Typically, a lamplighter will take their turn first, then one of their enemies. You see, you kind of do like popcorn initiative that way. Some enemies may break that rule. Typically, whenever a lamplighter takes their turn, their player then takes an enemy's turn for them. This is how we get past the GM list sort of thing. So you do something with your character, and then you choose another enemy in the fight to puppet master for that turn. Or if it's reversed where an enemy goes first, then you take your turn after. That's super, super cool. Andromeda and Fatima are trying to snatch some salvage. So, like, I love having these sort of examples and stuff like that. I love that. That's cool. And, like, in a game like this, right, when you go GM-less and you go, you end up in combat, you're going to get people who are going to be like, well, I'll just have the enemy do something real dumb and not productive at all. And you're like, I guess. But that's not why we play the game, right? We're playing this combat-focused game because we want a fun fight. So I would trust my players to do some cool stuff with the enemies. All right, lamplighters can take 3 actions, so it's an action point economy. Love action point economies. Enemies take 2 or 3, depending on type. Attack. Make 1 or more, depending on your weapon. Hit, location, roll immediately. So this is going to be the grid thing, which we will get into the grid soon, because the grid is the coolest thing ever. Yeah, you're just self-regulating in terms of which enemies are going to be smart in combat and which ones aren't. And you have that conversation in session 0, right? You just have that conversation with your table and go, all right, is this like a power fantasy where we're going to be wiping out goons and these goons are like, they're not going to stand a good chance? Or like, this faction in particular, they're the crafty ones, and so we got to play crafty with them. So you can attack. You can only attack with a given weapon once per turn. Not missiles, though. Missiles are something else, which we'll talk about. Move a number of zones based on your thrusters. Cool, so you can move around. You gain evasion for every 3 zones moved during a turn. Oh, that's right. Evasion helps makes it harder for them to hit you. Cool, so you want to be mobile. I immediately like this because this happens in my games. It happens in so many games that are kind of combat based, where eventually your character kind of moves to a place and then they kind of just stay there and just keep hitting somebody until they die, and then they move somewhere else and they keep hitting somebody until they die. This immediately says you want to keep moving. You want the fight to flow. And in having it flow, you will gain an advantage. So it makes things just more interesting. And you get a little treat for doing that, right? Incentivize the behaviors you want. Deploy. Use a missile launcher to deploy the number of tile. Yeah, so this is the cool thing. So missiles are different than the other stuff. You deploy missiles and then you direct them. You pick up to 5 missiles that you've launched and move them across the zone. So you're like, you can take less movement on your turn or less other actions to be like puppet mastering your missiles around. That's super, super cool. Repair, patch yourself up. Restoring functionality to a square on your grid. Tackle. Oh, nice. Make a roll against somebody with accuracy equal to how many sizes bigger, smaller you are than the target. Okay. Cool. So you can just run up and tackle a mech. That's awesome. All right, here's where we're going to see the grid. This is the thing that I wanted you all to see because I think it's so cool. When a character makes an attack or when a missile reaches its target, you roll the hit roll to figure out where on this person's grid it hits them. So there's sort of this assumption that there's this like 6x6 grid, and you're layering your mech's grid on top of this, which you're now going to understand immediately why the smaller frames are much harder to hit. They have less things that they can do, but they're way harder to hit. And that's the cool trade-off. So when you make a hit roll, you pick 2 different dice. Might help to have like 2 different colors or two different symbols on the dice, something like that. Decide which one's the tens, which one's the singles, and then you roll. And the outcome of that roll tells you which square on the grid has been essentially targeted for the hit. And so again, if you've got a small little 2x6, then it's very hard for people to hit you because on the tens column dice, 4 out of the 6 values immediately mean that you're not getting hit, right? That's super cool. If they don't roll the 1 or a 2, you're good. They roll 3, 4, 5, or 6 on their tens die, your nimble little frame is dancing around out there. But if you're the big beefy guy who's got a shit ton of stuff, yeah, you're going to be taking hits all the time, but that's also okay because you've got a shit ton of stuff on you to fight back with. So here's an example, right? So being attacked by twin pistols, they roll a 36. So 3 for the column and 6 for the row, and a 23. So because they're attacking twice, right? So 3, we go to 3 and we go to 6. Complete miss, right? Doesn't hit. But then the 23, we go to 2, 3. This thing is being hit. The electronic warfare processor is getting hit. Any part that is hit is damaged, and the damage taken is subtracted from the max HP, right? So remember, I think your HP is equal to the number of squares on your grid. So it's easy to track how much HP you have left because you look to see how many squares you have that aren't damaged. If all squares of a part have been hit, that part is destroyed. So for example, here's this gun right here. If somebody rolls a 15, a 25, and then a 35, this gun is busted. It's gone. Which is why you're going to want to spend some of your actions doing this repair thing to try and fix up the stuff that is getting hurt before it breaks. Now you might be thinking right away, like, that seems like pretty random, right? It seems like it's going to be like really hard to hit certain people or like to hit parts that you really want to hit. That's true. You'll see in a second that there's kind of a solution path to this, but there's also, it helps to recreate the chaos and speed that is intended with this sort of mech combat. So crit, if you hit an area that's already currently damaged, the attack either does extra damage or has an extra effect, depending on the weapon. All right, so here's how you gain a little bit of control over the grid. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. Accuracy represents the degree to which you can turn misses into hits and hits into more accurate hits. If accuracy is positive, so if you have gained accuracy from something like a piece of gear that you have, or maybe your frame affords you accuracy when you do a particular thing, you now have positive accuracy, which means you can increase or decrease the value of either die that you rolled by 1 for each point of accuracy. Pretty cool, right? So pistols have +2 accuracy. So as a result, you can go, okay, I'm going to take that 36, I'm going to take that 6 and take 2 away, bring it to 34. I'm back into hitting your stuff now. Right? So now you get a chance to change fate as you're doing it. Evasion is the opposite then. Evasion, which we learned is like one thing that you can get from like moving a bunch, probably again from gear and frames and stuff like that. You gain 1 evasion for every 3 zones, and evasion is subtracted from accuracy. So if somebody's got the read on you, but you've been moving all over the place, their accuracy starts to dip away, and so now they might not be able to hit you as much or have as much control over the hit. We also saw earlier that those attributes, those things that are part of the pilot, that are just sort of the resources that you spend to make things happen. One of those things that you can do is spending them in combat. So you can alter our rolls further by spending attributes, and it looks like you have to spend a specific attribute for certain types of weapons. So like missiles, for example, need nerve. So if you've like blown through all your nerve, you can't continue to adjust missile weapons by using force. Nerve is the thing that you need for missile weapons and stuff like that, which is really, really cool, right? I think that's super, super cool. So yes, the grid sounds very random at first, but then there is an unbelievably fun puzzle that is played inside of it, which is looking for ways to get yourself as much accuracy as possible, maximizing your evasion so that enemies can't draw a bead on you, and deciding when you're going to start burning through these attributes to figure out all the different little combinations, right? Because then it starts to get really fun. Then you start to look at the different grids and start to think, okay, like subtracting from the tens column obviously moves things over a column. Subtracting things from the ones moves them up and down rows. So thinking of different combinations of moving this thing around, you can get a good degree of control and mobility on targeting the different parts of the grid. It's very cool. Armor. So something like this, it's going to protect you from taking hits on some of this stuff. Multi-hits. This lets you make a specified number of hit rolls, so like attacking multiple times and stuff like that. Missiles. You can shoot missiles out of the air. I love that. Roll 1 die for every hit roll that would be made. If it's 4 or higher, the missile is destroyed. Just keeping it clean, right? Because obviously the missile doesn't have a grid or something like that. But I'm sure there's also stuff that you have that you can use to confuse missiles and stuff like that. That's great. All right, so you have your hit points. Mech is, it's just equal to the number of grid cells, which makes it just immediately obvious to you how your mech is doing. And like, now hit points actually make sense, right? Like we have hit points in so many games, and they're just like, hit points don't mean anything until the last hit point for so many games, right? You got 10 hit points, but really the only one that matters is 1, because you go from 1 to 0 and now you're dead or down. But in this, the hit points actually matter, because as your pieces get dwindled, that's how you lose hit points, but it also means you're losing access to the parts. Having hit points actually matter is really good. It's good. Cool. So I love this. You can always eject when you're trying, if you think you're going to explode, which is kind of fun. But this is great. Have a conversation with your table about what you want to do about character death. Is it something that it's on the line, especially with these like reactor things? Do you want to leave it to a die roll? Do you always get to escape? Things like that. Protagonist pilots are always successfully ejecting. It's cool. I like that it gives advice on what you could do with it, but you have options. Okay, I'm gonna now go back up to the frames to talk about them, because now we have the context for how these frames work. Like I said, we're not gonna read all of them, but we're gonna read a few of them just to kind of get a sense of like what they're like. Light frames, these are the quick ones. So yeah, you have a super small grid, 6x2. You have double the extra movement speed you gain from having an oversized thruster. Move +1 zone if you only have a light thruster. So this is just incentivizing you to just go as light as possible and just move. So with all of these, there's this, and then there's, so like these are like two different light frames. They're both considered light frames, but they have a different setup. So this is the medium frame and setup. So let's look at the light frame. Light flash, which is what this frame is. Build most commonly used by home ships, a short-range skirmisher and glass cannon built for the adrenaline junkie. Trust only your speed. So here's your stuff, right? And we can see what that stuff does. So shotgun. Now we can now that we have the combat context, we can understand how this stuff works, right? So range 0 to 1. So you can attack people in the same zone as you or 1 zone away. The amount of damage it does. Single shot. So +1 accuracy. So this is how you're gaining accuracy, right? So if you have the shotgun, you have a chance to kind of control it in terms of how you're going to land on the other grid. And then triple damage. And notice the shape of this, right? So it's 3 damage. This is the damage line that it makes, right? If I'm understanding how damage works, it's not just that you're attacking like one square, but you're attacking like everything in this, like this line, because it's 3 damage. So it's a shotgun, so it's gonna do a spread of harm of sorts. Oh, that's the part shape. Okay, that actually makes more sense. All right, thank you very much for catching me on that. All right, that makes more sense. Okay, I was about to say people are gonna die real fast otherwise. All right, that's the part shape. So here's your part shape. Blade, you have to attack on the same thing. 6 damage, super accurate, right? So it makes sense. With a blade, you have a better chance to be like, I want to take out this part on the enemy. And then it does triple damage on a crit. Here's your targeting processor. Connected weapons that multiply damage on a crit add 1 to their damage before multiplying. Nice. Connected explosive and electric weapons gain +1 accuracy. So you have this processor, and now you're starting to think like, ooh, okay, I want to get myself some explosive or electronic weapons to get even more accuracy. I don't have that stuff maybe to start, but that's stuff that I want to build towards. So there's a bunch of these different frames. Let's jump to a medium frame here. So here's a medium frame, jack of all trades. Fill most any role their heart desires and their frame can fit. So you can see that these grids are a little bit bigger than the others. So it's a 5x4 grid. It's going to take up a lot of the big targeting grid in general. And then also armor in the noted grid squares. So there's, you notice how there's some of this has like a thicker line. That stuff is armored up. And so you might think about putting some of your more valuable stuff inside the armored section so that you don't blow up, like if your reactor gets got and stuff like that. Here is your MF Bandit. I know it's medium frame, but MF Bandit sounds cooler otherwise. Medium flash. So here it is. You got a giant ass sword. Huge sword. You have shields, processor, assault rifle, thrusters, missiles. You're getting a lot of cool stuff. But it also, again, like you might go, oh, of course I want this one. This has all the stuff. Yeah, but you're also like super easy to hit as a result. You're going to get hit all the time. It's a game of Tetris to really think about how you want to lay out all of your stuff, right? So the assault rifle, because it's got this little, got the handle here. It's like a little L shape. So you got a big blade, you got an assault, missile batteries, you have a recoil compensation processor. So connected, full auto, virus, and fast weapons gain +1 accuracy if it's in negative. So that helps you like recalibrate from being negative. You got shields that you can apply. This one's got a rail gun. That's awesome. Look at that art. That's so cool. I just love the general art and layout of the book as well. It's really good. Bark and bite in equal measure for these heavy frames. Look at that, 5 by 5. That's a big old. Oh, Pennywitch is Charlotte. Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, it's fantastic. Demolisher, add +1 to the number of full auto hit rolls, or +2 of the damage makes 5 or more hit rolls. So you just crush people with this thing. Look at this giant axe that you have. I know we saw it earlier, but it still cracks me up. That, what is it, 7 squares on your grid is an axe. You really mess people up with this thing. So it hits adjacent squares for 1 damage. So not only does it hit whatever gets targeted, but things near it also getting hit. Big fucking gun. So look, -3 accuracy, -5. So your accuracy is, you're not getting control over your roll, but you get to make 6 hit rolls as a result. But you're losing your ability to kind of get that control, or that ability to kind of dictate where the hits go by having that negative accuracy. You got yourself a shield. This person's got a giant stun needle. Virus probe. I've seen this before. What does the virus probe do? All right, so this is an electronic. Powered, ignores armor and shields. Make 2 hit rolls. Non-reactor parts hit count is destroyed. Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool. That's really cool. Ultra frames, even bigger. 6 by 5. So basically, you got a really good chance that you're going to get hit every turn. You have the ability, stable fire platform, so you get to kind of gain some accuracy as you kind of like plant yourself with your giant ass frame. UF Castle is a great name. Huge reactor. EBFG, extra big fucking gun, probably. Even bigger fucking gun. Yeah, it's called an enormous axe for a reason. Yes, look at this art. Look at this giant mech with its giant gun. Its fuck off gun. That's so good. So yeah, 5 by 6, 6 by 5. The Unblitz. Interesting. Guided missile launcher, huge proximity missile battery. So many awesome frames. I don't know which one I would want to... I don't know who I would want to be. Probably this one, the Hack the Planet one. Because I would want to be a little bastard. But I'd be big. I don't know. I also like the idea of just being super small and being very hard to hit. Uh, ooh, that's tricky. That's tricky. All right, so we've got through combat. We've seen the frames. Here's some enemies. Like I said, we're not going to read all the enemies or anything like that, but I just want to get a sense of like how the enemies work, especially since we're in control of controlling, or in charge of controlling them, instead of having a GM, which is cool. Anyone can become enemies or not if they're willing to fight. 3 types: minion, standard, elite. 2 actions per round for the minions. 3 actions for our standards. Our elites, 3 actions per round, and they come in hot. Small pool, something called threat. That can be spent just like the attributes. So these are like they're like the named enemies, where you're like, oh, this is not just a goon. This is like a person that we are aware of. We have intel on this person. We should be worried about this person. So, encounter difficulty. Yeah, this is curious, because I have no sense of how many people I should put. So this helps me a lot. I'm bad at building encounters, which is why I make power fantasy games where you can literally just throw waves of enemies at the PCs and they'll be fine, because I don't want to think about how many you should have. 2 minions are worth 1 standard enemy. 2 standard enemies are worth 1 elite. Gotcha. All right. Factions. This is like I said at the very beginning of the stream. They are crowdfunding factions, and I might be tempted to make Binary make a crow faction. Because I gotta have my goddamn crows everywhere. Enemies presented here are frequently tied to specific factions. These can be home ships, the fellow home ships and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, other home ships that are out there, they're gonna be messing with you. Scavengers, not a coherent faction, but a bunch of bastards out there. Scavenger grouping is several poor to mid-quality light frames. Gotcha. So that helps us give a sense of like they're not coming in with the hottest tech. This is neat. LF Gunslinger. Well, wait, I want to be this. I want to be this instead. Light flash build with 2 pistols and a heavy thruster designed to get close enough to shoot out a light or medium frames reactor for easy capture and salvage without getting wrecked. This is the one I want to be. I want to be a scavenger. And then this tells you how to adjust the frame based off of the type, right? So if you want this gunslinger as a minion, remove the shield generator, and it has 6 HP instead of 12. Elite gains a trait, streamline. So now it has 4 threats. So it's got that ability to spend to control the dice rolls and things like that. I love that. I love that, like, you can just make 1 stat block for an enemy and just say, here's the variance of it. So that I'm not making 30 different enemies, but I'm making a smaller handful of them, and you're making these small adjustments. It's really cool. The engineer. Got that giant stun needle again. Things like that. And again, here's how you change it up. Yeah, I bet. Binary says, especially with the grid, it'd be a huge pain to make unique grids for all kinds of enemies. Yeah, that would be tremendously annoying to do. Now you can skip that, which is great. Here's your medium frame. Ooh, they got a sniper rifle. Infinity, one of the first home ships. Today, Infinity maintains bases on several planets. Okay. That's a cool logo for Infinity. I like that a lot. Is this 2 railguns? Oh my god. Double railgun mech. Twin railguns. And then followed up with missiles. That's pretty good. That's pretty cool. What's the size of this? It's 3x6. Okay. So half the time. HN Matrix. Designed to disable enemies with EMP missile barrages. Cool. What does the EMP do? Non-reactor parts hit count as destroyed. Wow. And if you get the crit, the adjacent parts, so not only do you destroy the thing that you hit, but also disables things alongside it. That's pretty cool. Ooh, an ultra frame, so the giant one. Fractal, great name. Love it. Maximized missile output. Yeah, look at these things. Huge missile battery. Absolutely. Non-mech enemies. Ah, okay, here we go. Handful of other enemies you might encounter. Drone. So they got a weapon layout and everything like that. Turrets. Cool, right? And so you can still represent an enemy that's not a mech by doing this stuff, because the enemy still has things. They still have equipment, essentially, that tracks their ability to hurt you. And so you just use that as their grid. The hover tank. Nice. So, in terms of exploration and stuff like that, I know that Binary had said it's a lot like Lumen or Lumen 2.0 and stuff like that. And yeah, right, you don't roll. You don't roll for things outside of combat. You just spend these attribute points to do it. I love that. Obviously, I love that. I'm really into that. I hate rolling for perception checks and negotiations and stuff like that. If you do the thing, your character's just not gonna do it. You know, I'm fine with rolling in combat. That's fine. Combat is chaos. But nothing frustrates me more than if I'm like having a conversation with an NPC trying to convince them to do something. I've made a very compelling argument. We've both role-played it out where they seem kind of convinced, and then it's like, but roll to see if it actually happens. And you're like, but it did actually happen. We had the conversation. They seem pretty convinced. And then you roll poorly, and then it's just like, oh, all of that didn't actually have an effect. None of that happened. So I love this. I love this. Establishing details sometimes is unclear based on the details. You can either roll or pick which details table to use. Oh, cool, there's details tables to look at. And then most of them have an attribute assigned to them, things like that. Taking risky actions. Players should describe whatever kind of task they want to do. Everyone at the table agrees, hey, this is like, this feels like a very Flash type thing that you're doing. And then you spend the attribute. You spend it, it happens without a hitch. If you can't or won't spend the attribute, it works. Yep, there's that Lumen 2.0. But there's a complication. Pick one of those things that can go wrong. That's awesome. I love this part here, though. Because, yeah, you add a complication, but, like, without a GM, what is the who makes the complication? Everyone comes up with things that could go wrong, and then you choose one of them. That's very fun. Hey, Meat Castle. Yeah, I hate social rolls. They're just the worst. The rolling here is like tables for kinds of details rather than does it work. Yeah. Yeah, and then, again, this book continues to be full of great examples and stuff like that. So look, here you go. Here's tables and things like that. So if you want to just establish some details in a scene, if you want to do some risky stuff, like when taking risky action, roll on the chart below for the effect. And then, like, here's some risky actions that can kind of like help get you an edge in combat and stuff, right? You can launch an ambush. Everyone acts first in round one. Oops, highlighted the wrong thing. But like, you could spend an attribute to like get the jump on them, right? Or all your spark all have +1 accuracy in their first round. Binary. I like these kind of codified ways of spending attributes in combat. Both in the accuracy thing, but also this stuff. That's very good. It's very good. It's very good. Here's some complications in case you can come up with one, which is great. Love this art. Missions. Here's a quick mission generator. Rated for 4 players. Cool. So then, boom, here you go. Roll this out. This is who you're fighting against. What is going on? Another great piece of art. Awesome. Where? Why? I love leaving it like this too. Just like to gain power. Cool. Awesome. We as the table will figure out the why. Right? I don't need the book to tell me all of that. We can figure it out. Because you were told to. No questions asked. Yeah, sometimes. And then here's an example mission. We won't read through the example mission because I want people who want to play the game to experience it on their own, but I love that there's an example mission. This art and layout. Charlotte, you did such a good job with the art and layout on this. Wow, this is a really cool adventure mission. Like, there's a lot to it. That's really cool. A deconstructive construction guide to the center of your universe, the grid. Oh, is this like a whole explanation like of what the grid is all about? Like just sort of like a designer insight thing? It kind of feels like it's a design commentary inside the book about the grid. This is great. This is like immediately helpful advice. And it's like, because there's no GM, you don't need like a GM advice section. You need like a, hey, how should you think about your grid? And what does the grid actually do? Like, what do your parts do and stuff like that? Like, the most important part of your thing is your reactor. So think about where you want to put your reactor. When you place your reactor, it is beneficial to place it around shields. This is good. This is good tech. This whole section right here. We won't read all of this advice. It's just nice that it's there. When assembling your own mech, there are a few other rules and suggestions to keep in mind. You can rotate or flip non-weapon parts, so reactors, move them around. You cannot rotate weapons, but you can flip them vertically or horizontally. Cool. Redundancy is sensible. If you only have a UL reactor and it gets hit, your mech is done for. Yeah. Sensible is over. Yeah, this is actually the best advice right here. That's the best advice. Sensible is overrated. Sure, you could do this, but wouldn't you rather have more railguns? I think you should have more railguns. And then here's all of our weapons. Awesome. Got so many different weapons. This is the stuff I would fuck around with, the electronic warfare stuff. Got missiles. Got all of our parts here. Got our thrusters. These are the things that help us move around. You are always saying that, Binary. It's every time I see you, always talking about railguns. Processors. So it's just like, if you're an armored core person, this is just like everything you're looking for. Just parts. Parts, so that you can just build craft all day long. And there we go. That's the end of the book. That's awesome. That's so good. It's so good. I love how detailed that, but just while it's still fresh on my head, I love how detailed that example adventure is. I feel like that will help people get a sense of how to play the game pretty quickly by doing something like that. You also, you could just like danger room some combats just to see how it feels, just to get used to that. That's awesome. So yeah, that's Celestial Bodies, the technical handbook. Like I said, it is itch funding right now on itch. I'll put the link here in chat, and then of course in the VODs and all of that will be the link and everything so that people can find it. But over $7 grand raised already, which is really awesome. But yeah, future editions, they're gonna come out with maybe some more stuff, like those Titans that they alluded to. Very excited to learn more about that. Further art and an even more evocative layout. I mean, the layout is very evocative as is, so can't wait to see. Oh, cool! Like a home, like a base building component too. This is awesome. And then yeah, lore. Give me the lore dump. Just give it all to me so that I can play in this space. But yeah, that's Celestial Bodies. Thanks so much everybody for coming and hanging out during this first impressions and flip through. I mean, it should be pretty obvious that my first impressions and flip through is that it is awesome. That it is very good. Hey, Charlotte, thanks for the follow. It's just super cool. I'm obviously like kind of in love with the grid thing. The second Binary shared it in the server, I thought it was super cool. Seeing the ability for you to kind of control it through the tech that you build and gaming things like spending your attributes on those combat components is really cool. It just seems like a lot of fun. Again, as somebody who's moving away from dice being in his games, this is the kind of dice rolling that I would have a lot of fun with. I would have fun, not with hitter's miss, but rolling and then messing with the puzzle of the grid. Sounds really, really fun to me. Basically, once again, it's another example of a game that Binary's been involved in where the dice are actually good. So, good dice. Great job, Charlotte. Great job, Binary. This game is great. We'll wrap it up here. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I had a lot of fun. I'm hoping to get some design streams in this weekend. We'll see. We'll see. We do love dice when they're good. We do love dice when they're good. All right, folks. That is the end of this, not review, but great read-through of this game.